Well, good afternoon. I'm Father David. Thank you for joining me today for Disciple Time. Now, for those who are joining me online, at Holy Communion Church, we just started a new series. And we started that this week, and the focus is God is on the move, empowering the church. So this past weekend, I talked about how Jesus in Luke 10, verse 2, made this statement: the harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. Ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers for his harvest. Then Christ chose 72 disciples and sent them out to cure the sick and proclaim the kingdom. Well, look at the sacred synchronicity here today, where once again we encounter Jesus in Matthew chapter 9, verses 37 through 38, saying the same exact thing to his disciples. We read, "The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers for his harvest." And in both accounts, this comes as Jesus is recognizing the need. And that is the people, Matthew says in the previous verse, were troubled and abandoned, and they were like sheep without a shepherd. And this kind of got me thinking, how do sheep benefit from having a shepherd? I mean, like actual sheep, right? And so this is what my research yielded as I was looking at this. Shepherds help sheep in 5 main ways, right? One is through protection. So shepherds act as guardians, protecting sheep from predators like wolves and other dangers. They watch for threats and defend the flock when necessary. And this is really a physical protection, right? The second is guidance. So shepherds guide the sheep to fresh pastures, ensuring they have access to food and water. They also help the flock navigate unfamiliar terrain to avoid potential hazards. Now, the third way that shepherds help is through care. And shepherds provide essential care for sheep, including stuff like tending to their health, making sure they're sheared, and all that kind of stuff, offering assistance when needed, and even rescuing lost or trapped sheep when they're out, grazing. The fourth way that shepherds help sheep is through leadership. So shepherds establish a bond of trust with their flock. This is something that is developed over time, guiding them with patience and consistency. And then through this, this leadership's a little bit different than guidance, because guidance is kind of like moment by moment, but the leadership is like overarching and stretching, where the sheep learn to recognize and trust their shepherd, hearing his voice, coming to know his mannerisms, following them for guidance and protection, all that. And then lastly is security. And this is a little bit different than the physical protection I talked about earlier. So the presence of a shepherd provides a sense of mental security for the sheep, and knowing that they're cared for, knowing that he's around and guiding them, they can take their mind off of that kind of, and this is a more mental fortification and kind of has like a calming effect. So in Jesus's day, in a time when being a shepherd was an actual vocation that everyone was familiar with, pretty much all of his disciples would have had a better understanding of what Jesus was trying to do. He was sending people out to protect people from wolves or those who were trying to exploit them. He was sending people out to offer guidance as to where relief and nourishment would truly come from. That place being in relation with God through Christ the Messiah, a long-awaited figure. He was sending people out to care for the sick. They said, go, care for the sick, proclaim the gospel. And basically gave them power to expel demonic influence, to heal diseases, to cure sickness. And this is actual physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual care. And then he was sending people out to provide leadership, to establish a basic level of trust, to order the church in different locations so that when Jesus arrived in a town, people would be more familiar with him and his teachings and his mission, that kind of thing. And he was sending people out to provide a sense of security. And that, other Jewish people were listening to Jesus and engaging his teaching, reporting his works, which would have helped calm some people, like, as word spread around on who this guy was. And so they were doing that also. So basically, Jesus was exemplifying the role of a spiritual shepherd, of people which today we call a pastor. And for those that don't know, pastor is the Latin word for, guess what? That's right, shepherd. And so the Latin word is derived from the verb pascere, meaning to lead to pasture, to set to grazing, and to cause to eat. And then interestingly enough, arguably one of the pastor's primary liturgical and sacramental functions is to lead people to the Lord's table and get them to partake in the Eucharist. In a more allegorical sense, then, the pastor's job is to spiritually nourish God's people and help them in their personal relationship with God. And that's all about empowering the church. That's what Christ was doing with his disciples. And so my application today, it's kind of for my pastor friends a lot, but it's also for anybody that shepherds people. It could be a parent that has children. It could be a grandfather or a patriarch of a family. It could also extend out to like the CEO of a business and how you manage employees and that kind of thing. And the idea for all of that is this: be a loving shepherd. Offer the best grazing opportunity you can, and call on the Holy Spirit through Christ to divinely empower your compassion. Well, thank you for joining me today as if we've looked at how shepherds help their flocks. We'll see you next time.